Have you ever spent a night in an old, eerie building where every creak and groan of the structure sends chills down your spine? Imagine this: a lonely orphanage nestled in the heart of a quiet, desolate town. It's a place that's been standing for decades, perhaps even centuries, its history as dark and enigmatic as the shadowy corners of the rooms within. The exterior, once vibrant and inviting, now stands worn and weathered, a testament to the countless seasons it has witnessed. The windows, like vacant eyes, stare out blankly, providing a glimpse into the gloom that lies within. On a particularly chilling evening, a new volunteer arrived at the orphanage. The sight of the building looming in the twilight was enough to make the bravest hearts falter. Yet, driven by a sense of duty and compassion, she steeled herself, taking in the imposing silhouette of the old structure. The wind howled in the distance, echoing her apprehension, as she stepped into the orphanage, crossing the threshold into the unknown. As she entered, the orphanage seemed to take on a life of its own. The wooden floors creaked under her weight, the sound echoing through the silent hallways. The air was heavy, laden with the scent of old books and dust, a reminder of the countless lives that had passed through these halls. Each room was a story in itself, filled with remnants of the past that whispered tales of joy, sorrow, and everything in between. The dimly lit corridors seemed to stretch into infinity, each shadow concealing a different secret. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional rustling of papers or the distant echo of a child's laughter. The volunteer couldn't shake off the sense of unease that clung to her like a second skin. It was as if the building itself was watching her, its walls whispering tales of its past. Yet, despite her apprehension, she felt compelled to explore, to uncover the secrets that the orphanage held. Little did the volunteer know, this was just the beginning of a long, spine-chilling night. Just as the clock struck midnight, the first odd occurrence took place. The old grandfather clock in the hall chimed, its resonating echo bouncing off the cold stone walls of the orphanage. The new volunteer, settled in her room, was awakened by the sound. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to shake off the fear that clung to her like a second skin. In the quiet of the night, she heard it. A soft whisper, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. The sound seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. It was a low hum, a melody so faint that she could barely make it out. But it was there, persistent and chilling. Then, the shadows began to play tricks on her. There were flickers in the corner of her eyes, fleeting shapes darting in the dark. She tried to convince herself it was just her mind playing tricks on her, but the sense of unease wrapped itself around her, tight and unyielding. Her breath hitched as she heard the soft patter of feet outside her door. The sound grew louder, then softer, then louder again. It was as though someone, or something, was pacing. She dared not open the door, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thicker. Every creak of the old building, every gust of wind howling outside magnified her fear. She was no longer alone. There was something else with her, something unseen and unheard. A presence that filled the room with an oppressive dread. The sense of fear grew, gnawing at her courage, feeding on her unease. She felt it creeping in, the cold tendrils of terror curling around her. The shadows seemed to grow darker, the whispers louder. The orphanage was not just a building. It was a living, breathing entity, filled with stories untold and lives unlived. But the true horror was yet to unfold. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the gloom, she knew that this was just the beginning. The orphanage held secrets, secrets that were waiting to be discovered, and she was just at the precipice, staring into the abyss. The orphanage held secrets, secrets that were desperate to be heard. As the volunteer delved deeper into the dusty archives of the institution, she stumbled upon forgotten records, yellowed with age and grim with tales of the orphanage's past. These were not just records of children who had once called this place home, but echoes of their lives, their fears, and their untimely demises. She discovered that the orphanage was a place of lost innocence, where children had disappeared under unexplained circumstances, and incidents that defied logic were brushed under the carpet. The record spoke of children who vanished into thin air, leaving behind only their small, empty beds and a chilling sense of dread. They told of strange happenings, of beds shaking in the dead of night, of laughter echoing through the empty halls, and of shadows dancing in the moonlight. As she turned the brittle pages, the volunteer could almost hear the whispered laments of these lost souls. The air grew colder around her, the silence more profound. It was as though the very walls of the orphanage were breathing, alive with the stories of its past. The realization hit her like a cold gust of wind. The orphanage was haunted, not by malevolent entities seeking to harm, but by the spirits of children who had been lost, forgotten, their stories untold. They were not there to frighten, but to be acknowledged, their existence remembered. She felt a shiver crawl up her spine, the weight of the past pressing down upon her. But there was no turning back now. She had unearthed the orphanage's secrets, and with it, the haunting reality of its past. The orphanage was no longer just a building. It was a living, breathing entity, a monument to the lives of the lost children, their laughter and tears echoing through its hollow halls. It was a place of sorrow, of longing, of stories that were desperate to be heard. The volunteer was now trapped in a real-life horror story. As the witching hour approached, the real terror began. In the eerie silence of the midnight hour, an uncanny chill swept through the orphanage, a chill that wasn't born of the cold night air. Shadows danced on the walls, taking on forms that defied explanation, forms that bore an uncanny resemblance to the shape of children. The volunteer, despite her courage, felt terror creep into her heart. She was no longer alone in the dimly lit corridors. She started to hear whispers, soft and childlike, echoing through the halls. They were voices from beyond, voices of the lost children, their giggles and sobs resonating in the stillness. The volunteer felt the hairs at the back of her neck stand up as if electrified. She could feel their presence, the ethereal children, their spectral eyes watching her every move. The echoes of the past seemed to come alive, filling the air with an eerie lullaby of laughter and tears. The spectral children seemed to play an endless game of hide-and-seek, darting in and out of the shadows, their ghostly giggles echoing in the cold stone corridors. The volunteer's heart pounded in her chest like a wild drum, the fear bubbling up inside her like a cauldron on a witch's fire. She tried to hold on to her sanity, to convince herself that these were just figments of her imagination, but the chilling touch of unseen hands and the soft whispers of the ghostly children were too real. She felt trapped, the fear gnawing at her courage, the desperation to escape growing with every passing second. The clock ticked on, each tick echoing like a death knell in the silent orphanage. The volunteer's breath hitched in her throat, her heart pounded in her chest like a wild drum, her palms were slick with cold sweat. The shadows grew darker, the whispers louder, the intensity of the fear she felt was palpable. Surviving the night seemed like an impossible task. When the night is darkest, the dawn isn't far. As we delve further into the eerie world of the orphanage, our brave volunteer, amidst the chilling whispers and spectral apparitions, makes a decision. A decision not of fear, but of courage. A decision not to run, but to confront the spirits that roam the halls of this forsaken place. As she takes this leap of faith, something unexpected happens. The air grows still, the whispers quiet, and the once menacing specters appear almost relieved. It's then that she realizes the truth, the sad, heart-wrenching truth. These spirits were not malevolent forces, but lost souls, orphaned not just in life, but in death as well. Their cries in the night were not threats, but pleas for their stories to be heard, their existence acknowledged. Their haunting echoes were not meant to incite fear, but to convey their yearning for remembrance. For who are we, if not the stories we leave behind? And so, our volunteer, her heart heavy with the weight of this revelation, makes a promise. A promise to these forgotten souls, to these children of the night. She promises to share their stories with the world, to ensure they are remembered, not as phantom threats, but as the innocent lives they once were. She promises to turn their tale of horror into a mission of remembrance, a mission to transform the orphanage from a place of fear to a beacon of history, a testament to the lives that once filled its rooms with laughter and tears. So, as the first signs of dawn pierce the night sky, a new day begins. And with it, a new chapter in the history of the orphanage. The spirits seem to retreat, their spectral presence less oppressive, their whispers less haunting. As the first ray of dawn touched the orphanage, the volunteer stepped out, a tale of horror turned into a mission of remembrance. With the breaking dawn, a resolve was born, a resolve to ensure that the last nights at the orphanage would not be forgotten. Instead, they would be remembered as the dawn of resolution,